Greetings, this is Mark Tucker with another APL Components video for viewers of the Dabble Lab channel. In this video, we'll learn about the ScrollView component. If you want to follow along in APL Ninja, look for the project link in the description. Here we go. In our project here, we have imported the Alexa styles, and we have our main template and a container that's taking up the entire viewport area here. The styles are going to be more for these text sizes that we're going to be using. Doesn't necessarily have to pertain directly to the ScrollView component. If we go ahead and turn on component highlighting, we've got two child components of the container. You notice now that this top section, this header with these up and down buttons, and these are actually touchable text areas, so buttons, and some data here. That's the top section, the header, and then the rest of it is the scrollable area here at the bottom. So let's take a look at this area here at the bottom. So we've got our ScrollView component, and it's taking up the entire width, and then it's taking up the height, and it doesn't really matter what we set the height to because we've set shrink and grow to take up the remainder of the space here. We also have some padding on the side, so what's going to be in this area is going to have a wider margin that's going to be the same on the left and the right, and a smaller margin or some padding on the top and the bottom. So let's first take a look at this items container. There's not really a lot of properties that are available for the ScrollView component, and it's in some ways is similar to the container component in that it lays out items and it's a non-visible component. Here is an items array, and I just want to take a moment to talk about this. So here in the APL scroll view, it says it's a scroll view that has a single child. Now remember, things like the touch wrapper and the frame, they each have single child components as well. But you'll notice that there's this property that's either item or items, and it's an array. So what happens if you specify in a component that is expecting a single child, multiple children? And let's take a look at what happens here. The key thing to look at here is that right now the text is saying text 1, and that's because this when condition is set to true. Some condition in here, it could be anything, some data binding expression, but in this case, we're just saying it's true. What's going to happen is if there's multiple children, in this case, there's 1, there's 2, there's 3 children that are in this items collection for the scroll view, it's going to find the first one where the when condition is true. So it's going through this list, and it finds the first one is true, and so it picks it. If this were set to false, and this one was set to true, then it's going to pick text 2. And what happens in this case right here is that there is no when, and so what happens when there is no when property on a component is that it, in essence, is there and set to true. So that's why if both of these are set to false, then we get what's in this area here. So just wanted to point that out. The next thing I wanted to point out here is that really the only property that we get in addition to items is this onScroll, and it's an event that happens when you're scrolling in this box. So notice that with this component, I can scroll up with my mouse. I'm just touching and dragging. I can use my scroll view on my mouse. Taking too many frames per second on this. But anyway, that's just a message that APL Ninja gives you to let you know that your frame rate's dropping. Probably because I'm doing a video on a very high resolution monitor. But anyway, the scrolling happens. You can use your mouse view. You can pull up and down. and position it. See, this position right here changes, and that is because of the unscroll, we can get to this position. So what does that position mean? If we were to go to the very top here, notice that the position is 0. And notice that this, in this case, is the Echo Show 2, and it's a landscape large hub. So if you notice where this text ends here, if we were to scroll and make that at the very top, see now the position is just over 1. So in essence, this position is telling you that we were at page 0. Now we've scrolled up to some fraction, so halfway up page 0. And so now we're up to page 1 here. Yeah, this might be a problem with the scroll view. But anyway, I have to turn this back on auto update. But as you notice, we're on page 2. Now if we change to a different viewport size, this isn't going to auto update. We got to flip back here. Okay, let's change to a different size. So let's Echo Show 10. I guess notice on different, like here's an Echo Show 15. The whole thing fits on the Echo Show 15 when it's portrait. Echo Show 15 landscape. There's a little bit, most of it fits. There might be just a little bit, just one row here that doesn't fit. So notice on the different viewports that we've got, we're going to have different amounts of what fits and what doesn't fit. So we're going to go down to, let's go to the Echo Show 5. So notice here, position 0, this Morris here is basically the bottom. And if we were to scroll up, so that was at the top. Now we are at where we need to be, at position 1. Man, this is going to be a challenge today. All right, so that's 0.85. And we scooch that up, and that's at 1, or close to 1. So now this Aratu EU is the next page, and so I just scrolled up, and so now I'm on page 2, and the same thing's going to happen, and we're going to get all these updates here. But anyway, this number right here is basically showing you if it's a 0, then you're on page 0. If it's some fraction less than 1, then you've scrolled up some fraction of that first page. So that's how that works. On this UI, what this top part's going to be is that we're going to be able to scroll up a page, down a page, go directly to section 1, go directly to section 2, go to index 1, I'll explain that, and then this position. So what's happening on this to help us understand? So in this section here, so in our scroll view, we have one active child, and this is the one that's being shown as this container, and it's got 4 children that are text components. Now, really, with a scroll view, it could be anything that you want. It could be text, it could be images, it could be whatever controls that you want to lay out. And what a scroll view is going to do is just lay them out one right after another, and then give you a scrollable region. So there is no visible indicator that this is a scrollable view. There is no scroll bar that you might see on some other, like on a browser or something. The only indication that there is more things at the bottom here is that this text is cut off, and you can see part of the text. If you wanted to add some sort of visible indicator that this is scrollable, then that's something that you're going to have to do on your own. In fact, I've got another project over here called ScrollView Button, that if, notice this button here when we first start it, it's going to do a short little animation, dropping that indicating that, oh, that's scrollable. And then if you were to click it, it would scroll down one page. If you were to scroll up and back up to the top, then it appears again. Hover over it, shows you that it's something that's tappable. So this is one thing that you could implement to help users know that this was a scrollable section. Because you might hit a scenario where you're changing the different viewports, and in fact, this whole text gets cut off just at the right point where it looks like it's the end, but there is more text or something to scroll. So anyway, wanting to point out that this container has 4 text. It could be anything, but in this case we're having text, and we're using this data section over here to do section 1, section 2, and just some lorem ipsum here for the content area. So that's what we've got here, but what we can do as part of this scroll view is that you can intercept this onScroll event. And what we're doing is that when the onScroll happens, we're finding a component called scroll position, which is the text that goes right here. And we're setting the value of the text property of that text component to this value, which is this position plus event.source.position, which is the number that tells you what's fractional portion of the screen you're scrolling to. So that's that part. So let's find where scroll position is in the header. We have a frame, which is defined in our background color. We've got a number of different components here. Most of them are wrapped in touch wrappers. So this is just really a text with an emoji for up and down, but it's a text component that's with a touch wrapper. Same text with a touch wrapper, text with a touch wrapper. Same thing here. So let's go all the way down here. Here is this text with an ID of scroll position. Its default text is going to be the text position 0, and I've applied a style to it. So all that happens is that when the scroll view unscroll event happens, we're just updating that with the most recent position. So that's how we get that number changing right here. That's the onscroll event. So let's talk about navigation of the scroll view. Once again, it's manually, you can scroll up and down, but let's see if I wanted to go up a page. So this arrow is going up a page, this arrow is going down a page. And once again, what's defined as a page is different depending on which viewport that you're at. So going back down, going down some more. So notice I can navigate down and up a page. And it's not necessarily quite a page because like here's this Morris right here, and we want to go down a page. It's going to keep that on the screen and show the next thing as close to the top as so there's some continuity. So there is some overlap of the text on that part. But let's take a look at what's happening with these first 2 buttons. If we go to this button here, man, this is going to be a challenge for this. Too much CPU. All right, there we go. What we've got on this button is that when we press this button, we're going to execute the scroll command, and we're specifying the ID of the scroll viewer, and we're saying that the distance we want to go is -1 page. So that's what the scroll command does. And then the same thing here for this down arrow is going to do the scroll command to that scroll viewer component with that ID scroll viewer, and the distance is down a page. So we can come back up here, and we can actually come down here, and we can find that the scroll view has an ID of scroll viewer. So if we go here to our standard commands, Off to the side here, there's scroll, ScrollToComponent, ScrollToIndex. So scroll in this case is just telling you this, that it's usually the scroll is going to be on the component that, well, I guess could be on the component that it's itself. If not, you specify what the component is, which is the scroll view, and then the distance. So that's what we did in this case. So now we want to go to section 1 and section 2. So let's go to these next ones here. So here we've got a text that says section 1. If we click it, it goes to section 1. If we click it here, it goes to section 2, goes back to section 1. So what happens when we click on section 1 is it's going to use the ScrollToComponent command, and it has a component ID saying what component do you want to scroll to. Now, instead of this being an ID of the scroll viewer itself, it's actually an ID that's assigned to this text object here. And we're just saying we're going to name this text object with an ID of section 1, and we've got another one that we're going to name of section 2. And you can define, do you want this to be aligned first, which means you want to get it up to close to the top left corner as possible. Last is down to the bottom right. Center, it just scrolls into the center, and I think visible just moves it the minimum amount possible to get it to be able to be something that's scrollable. So that's that area there. And so if we were to look at our text here, you'll notice that this text component has an ID of section 1, and that's why this ScrollToComponent works. It goes right and scrolls to where we need it to there. So the last thing that I want to show you is this index one. And so this index, so we looked at ScrollToComponent, ScrollToIndex. This component ID is actually, since there's one child in the scroll view, and in our case it's a container, then this is going to be the ID of that container, and then there's going to be multiple items, and it's going to be the index of the item in that list. So let's look at that specifically here. So in our case, notice we have the scroll view, which has an ID for scroll viewer. We've got a container, which I've given it the ID of parent container. And then we have the 4 items. So this is index 0, index 1, index 2, index 3. So index 1 is going to be this content area. So it's going to be the top of this content area, like right here. So if we went to index 1, it's going to move that up. If we went down to section 2 and then back up to index 1, it moves that up into view. So that's what that looks like. And the way that that looks in code is right here. So here is the index 1. So we're saying, doing the command ScrollToIndex, specifying the parent container, and that it's going to bring it as close to the top left here, and index 0. So if we were to change it to 0, index 0, it would be the same thing as going to section 1. If we changed it to index 2 in this case, it would be the same thing as going down to section 2. So that's what we've got going on with that. So unfortunately, there is not a way to indicate or to know when you first bring up your scroll view, like how many pages worth of data there is. It would really be nice to say, oh, there is like 5 pages, because then you could have some sort of a control, like, well, one, beginning, like start, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, end, and then you could have some sort of a pager control that would help you scroll up and down, and that's not available. There is kind of some trick as far as different way of showing some indicator that this is there or not, but you still have the problem of maybe on the viewport that you're using, maybe all the text fits. There is no paging at all, and there is no good way at this point in time to figure out, is this paging happening, or should paging happen or not, and whether to show controls or not show controls. So hopefully that will be an improvement that comes in a future version of APL. But that covers all the different aspects of the ScrollView component. Apologize for some of the issues that we had with the number of frames per second, and that keeps switching things off for this video, but I think that worked out pretty good. So in this video, we learned about the ScrollView component, the onScroll event, as well as 3 scroll commands: scroll, ScrollToComponent, and ScrollToIndex. In the next video, we'll look at the sequence component. I hope this video was helpful. Please let me know with a like or a share. Thank you very much for watching.